Kia ora, Mr. Speaker. It's interesting to listen to the debate this afternoon and to hear that there seems to be support across the House, although cautious support from us here in Labour. And as I've been listening, there's the old phrase that everyone knows about it takes a village to raise a child. But I really think sometimes you need to flip that around and consider it takes a child to remind us our responsibility to the village. And I think looking at this legislation, and I was actually a member of the Social Services and Community Committee last term. I was Deputy Chair when we went through this process. And the challenge for me then, and the challenge for me now is again, what is my responsibility to my village and for the sake of our tamariki, of our rangatahi. And I know that it was challenging when we went through the process, and many of my colleagues from previous years and my friends in my own community did question, particularly around the five-person board. But I came to a place, Mr. Speaker, where I did support it wholeheartedly. And the reason I did was because it was around diversity, and it was around the whole concept of you often have to be able to see yourself to be able to actually reach out and to seek the help you need. And we had people like the Honourable Karen Shaw, we had people like the previous speaker and other members speaking about it's clumsy and it's difficult to, having a five-person board as opposed to one commissioner. But my challenge back to that is you need to be able to see yourself to actually be in the space or have the ability to actually connect and actually seek out the necessary help. And I looked through back from when the first iteration of the Children's Commissioner was established in 1989, and there were 8 Children's Commissioners up until we brought this new piece of legislation in 2022. Of the 8, 2 were female. And of the 2, only 2 were Māori. And of course, funny that the 2 wahine were also Māori. And so of those 8 commissioners, that what it was. And I just think that's where we need to look very carefully about who is stepping up and representing us in this space. So my challenge as we take this and cautiously take it to the Select Committee is for us to listen carefully to the advocates, listen carefully to stakeholders around how it has actually worked in the last 2 years in terms of having the 5-member board. What was good about it, maybe what was challenging about it, but the fact that we need to be able to see ourselves in that space. So the second part I want to briefly talk about is in terms of, I guess, my role in my whole life, pretty much, particularly my adult life, in terms of working with young people and their families. And the fact, coming back to that village scenario, it's around how do we in this House always look deeply into legislation that actually the child is at the centre of that. So that's where I have concerns, but I'm willing to commend the bill today, to go to Select Committee, to look and to listen and to understand where we actually can best do what we can for the sake of our rangatahi, for the sake of our tamariki. And the Minister putting the bill through this afternoon, we sat in the Select Committee last term and we went through this. And as I said at the start, it was challenging, but I thought we needed to look at a different way of doing it. And so willing to move forward and for us as a Labour Party to support this bill and to really critique it, to pull it apart, but to listen carefully to our stakeholders and those engaged, particularly at the coalface of working with our rangatahi and our tamariki. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to the House.
Well, that sounds like a bit more of a decent speech.
Yeah,
I do have a random question, though, that I just thought of. Like, I realise that they've got assigned seats and all that kind of stuff because it's Parliament, but surely if all of the seats in front of you are empty, you'd be allowed to sit in them if nobody else is using them?
Some ministers do move forward. It's just maybe he chose not to. Yeah, no, I said that in question time. Ministers moving forward to answer questions, but
you also need to bunch up closer to the people who have the cameras on to make it look fuller. Yeah, I remember there was one particular time where Greg O'Connor said he had to sit in the House, not to do speech, but had to sit in there, and it was the banning of gay conversion therapy bill. And every time Labour had a spokesperson or someone standing around him, so he had to sit there and stand there going, nodding his head the whole time. So he couldn't even sit down there and get out the laptop and do actually other things, because he had to sit down there and look like he's agreeing with the speech, which he completely agreed with, and he didn't know what he was walking himself into. But at the same time, he said it was quite awkward that it was someone always around him that was actually speaking. And
it's like trying to spot that extra who's in every movie.
Yeah, except this time it was in Parliament. This was before he became was it part of the Speaker leadership team.
Is Labour voting for or against this bill? Because I couldn't tell from his speech. He didn't seem to criticise it too much, but it didn't seem to endorse it.
They're voting to send it to Select Committee. So they have a promise.
Let's see how the vote goes.
Yeah, okay. Like the treaty principle, go to Select Committee.
I commend this bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye.
To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Oversight of Oranga Tamariki System Legislation Amendment Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Oversight of Oranga Tamariki System Legislation Amendment Bill be considered by the Social Services and Community Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Honourable Louise Upston.
I move that the Oversight of Oranga Tamariki System Legislation Amendment Bill be reported to the House by the 6th of March 2025.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Okay, I think we've answered the question.
There we go.
Yes, so yes, and this is what happens when you have a bill that passes. It goes very quickly through the whole process. There's no, process that you have to sit down there and do party votes and hear them all stand around, and you save yourself about 2 to 3 minutes of time.
Yeah, it's very rare you see, such bipartisanship in this house.
Where's the drama? I wanted drama, damn it.
You need the content.
Exactly.
Yes, this is
David Seymour can't be the only one giving it to me.
we show the MPs at their best as well as their worst.
Mr. Peters is on vacation somewhere. You can't get him in the house at the moment.
Well, isn't he overseas?
Oh, is he overseas at the moment, or is he still there? He wasn't causing any drama this time. So the only logical conclusion I can come to is overseas.
David?
No,
Winston. Because there's no drama.
Winston's been overseas.
Yep.
I'm not sure if he's back or not yet.
But there was no drama from his side of the house this week. They left it all for David to basically introduce his bill. They trade off every week. It's either David or Winston. David or Winston. They're having a boxing fight who could cause the most drama in the Parliament.
Yeah. They often do. You'll actually notice if you monitor the media closely, particularly with David and Winston, there will be like ups and downs because Winston's had too much, so David or one of his people have to do something ridiculous. But if you actually sit down and monitor who gets the most media coverage in this country, Luxon by a long shot first as Prime Minister, and then David Seymour gets about a quarter of all media coverage, and that's because of the Treaty Principles Bill. Because this group says we don't want it. David Seymour opposes. This other group says we don't want it. David Seymour responds. There's going to be a hikoi. David Seymour responds. He's incredibly savvy with getting his face and name all of this coverage around this bill. So it certainly ups his profile a lot, which means that Winston sits here in the corner doing his grumpy face and I need a smoke and give me a drink.
I wonder if his media coverage will die down once the Treaty Principles Bill dies off its natural death of being shot down by both parties, or if it will.
I have a feeling that it may not be shot down because David Seymour will threaten to break the coalition.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you think they're going to be scared by that though? Because New Zealand First has gone through, coalition breakups before. So do you think they'll squeeze to that pressure, or do you think they'll?
You have an unpopular Prime Minister who has real trouble connecting with people, who did everything he could to get into that job. He's got a very tenuous relationship with his coalition partners. Mm-hmm. There are some people, for example, who were really unhappy with National going with New Zealand First, and there are some New Zealand First members who are really unhappy with going with National or going with anybody. It is a tightrope that he's walking at the best of times. To suddenly have his whole government come to a stop and nothing work in Parliament anymore because David Seymour wants his Treaty Principles Bill it's a real risk, and there are lots of mumblings and rumblings that come out of Cabinet about David throwing tantrums if he doesn't get what he wants on other ways. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was a bit of it. Well, you're going to support it, or you could make it a conscience vote, and then that way you can say you didn't support it, but those that want to can. And there are National Party MPs who do support.
For sure. But they also need all three parties, don't they, to get it across? Not just National. They need New Zealand First, don't they?
They just need a majority. If they could get, if they do it as a conscience vote and MPs from the Greens or Labour or Te Pāti Māori across the floor, which isn't likely, but it's a possibility. There are ways of doing it.
Yeah. For what Rajan has put on there, if he does drop below 5% at the next election, David Seymour currently holds an electorate.
Yeah, so does Brooke.
I think she's well.
But it may not be an electorate at the next election.
But Tamaki will exist.
Yeah.
So, I think Brooke's got that. There's no competition there in the electorate, unfortunately. I like Brooke. I think she's decent. as a minister. I don't think she's perfect, but I think she's better than a lot of the other people in the House. She just shows the bar, shows the standard.
I don't think she.
I think Brooke is very much what the voters of Tamaki are after.
Yeah.
Probably the best.
I would agree with.
Completely separate to how the voters see her. And Tamaki's a really interesting electorate in that you've got, like, it's Mission Bay kind of area. There's some very well-to-do individuals there who have a ton of money, but it's also very, very close to areas like Glen Innes, where you've got a bit of a borderline there where there isn't a huge amount of money, but the people who have the money are the ones that tend to go out and vote, and tend to be really friendly and give money to the MP.
Yeah. Look, I think Brooke is far less conservative than David Seymour. You see him I think you see David supporting a lot more conservative bills, whereas I think Brooke is slightly more liberal than he is, and maybe just because she's a lot younger than David is and tends to share more liberal.
And possibly hasn't quite been brought out by Atlas.
maybe.
No, I don't buy that. I think it wouldn't surprise me if she's on their list.
Yeah. Okay.